Good afternoon. Welcome to the Dialogue with Dozell. And wow, we have an exciting show for you tonight. Wow, do we have an exciting, uh, I'm so excited about the guests that are coming on tonight. Uh, but we're going to start the show off tonight with the dedication to one of my sincere heroes, and that's in the person of Franco Harris. We are, okay, Madam Producer. Okay, we'll come back to that later. So, all right. So what we're doing tonight is I'm just kind of giving my guest a second or two, and we're going to be hopping on. Tonight we're doing it's kind of like an end of the year show. We are examining just how far America has come since the tumultuous year that was 2020. I don't know how many of you remember it or not, or how many of you all are old enough to remember the year of 1968. 68 was filled with a series of events that we'll always remember, as was 2020. And we want to just ask the question tonight: how far have we come since we've had this tumultuous series of events that occurred over in 2020? How far have we come since then as a nation and as a people and individually? So in just a hot second, um, we'll be calling. Are we ready? Our guests available? Okay, we're going to bring on. Well, I'll give them a second or two. I think that we're doing some things technically, but so how was your Christmas holidays? That's we'll start out with that. How was your Christmas holidays? Uh, Hopefully it was great. Man, if you were in the state of Florida, it was cold. If you were in the state of Michigan, it was cold. You were in the state of Rhode Island, it was cold. If you were in Washington State, it was raining and cool to cold. If you were in Texas, it was cold. If you were in Missouri, it was cold. But if you were in California, it was 70, leading up to 80 degrees. My cousins and I have this text thread, and we were, because the cold was just like all over the country, we kept screenshotting the Weather Channel and showing each other our maps. And I think when I saw our cousins over in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, first Jan, and maybe she'll hop on tonight, I don't know. But when we saw that the temperature over in Michigan, over in Detroit, was going to be, it was 1 degrees, and they had already been hit with some snow, because you know it doesn't snow in those colder temperatures. The snow brings on the colder temperatures. But when I saw my cousins in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is still considered down south, and see that their weather was 7 degrees, single digits, that's when I got cold just seeing that. Well, Jacksonville were to be experiencing 20-degree weather, and down here, South Florida was in the 40s, and so it's been one of the colder Christmases since moving down here. And maybe you know, I moved here from just west of Chicago, which means it's even colder, and I think since moving here in '98, I have worn my what they used to call me my Inspector Gadget coat. I've only worn it once. That's that long tan trench coat. I've only worn it once down here. When we first moved down, I was looking for a place at about this time of the year. And then I wore it when I went up to Chicago during the cooler temperature. Other than that, I have to find it in my closet because I just don't wear it. Well, I went to see a friend in the hospital yesterday, and my car, of course, is garage. I said, I won't need this. I'm sure I won't need this. So I ended up just taking it, and I said, I'll just put it in the garage because put it in the back seat of the car because I could not get a true sense of how cold it was. Um, but when I got out at the hospital yesterday morning, man, it was freezing. I put that coat on. It was a little wrinkled. It was slightly, had a couple little areas on it. I didn't care nothing about any of that. All I cared about was putting my arms through that cold and getting from that parking lot to that hospital. Cause man, it was cold. It was cold. It was cold. So anyway, we'll get ready for the show. Hope you're warming up. I think it warmed up here a little bit. Hope you're warming up. Um, I'm getting ready. We get ready for the we get ready for the show. I see. I guess um, are signing on now. We're working through a few little difficulties here, and I'm so excited about them. But first, I'm waiting here from the control room, doing a few things in preparation. Um, we want to. So we'll do that. We'll do that then at the middle part of the show. So can we bring the guests up, Madam Producer? Can we at least bring Daisy on? Okay, she's been here several times before. This is my cousin, Daisy Taylor Grimes, and I'm so excited tonight that joining her is her husband, Attorney Hubert Grimes. He's a retired circuit court judge in Volusia County, and he's going to be joining us. Daisy, like I said, has been on with us before, and I have been trying to get Hubert, and tonight I got a twofer. I got 2 for 1. I got both of them on that night, and it's exciting, so exciting. KV ended up getting a last-minute interview from the news. From he does work for one of the news channels there in Jacksonville, and he got hit up at the last minute. Hopefully, he will come on, and who knows? Janice may join us. Daisy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you? Other than this cold weather here.
If you heard my diatribe while I was stalling,
Yes.
it is cold indeed, and we're right on the lake, and we got these long picture windows, and I think that it contributes. It can be ever so warm upstairs, but it's cool down here. So I sit down with sweatpants on. The day I was able to pull the sweatpants off and just wear shorts, but I think that it may be warming up a tad. But it has really been cold. I was just
Yeah,
telling
it
you.
was we had it in the 20s last night and on Saturday night. And I mean I like it because it's Christmas, so you don't want it to be I don't like it to be too hot. And normally we're in North Carolina for Christmas, but we stayed home this year. But it can leave now. The cold weather can go now. Christmas is over. So uh
Daisy, I know you went to Bethune, but have you ever lived in the north anywhere?
when I was working for Congress, I was in Washington. I would go backwards and forth to Washington, and when Congress was in session, I actually was up there.
Were you an aide to Judge Hastings?
No, I was an aide to E. Clay Shaw.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I forget. You got some things you can share with us. I forgot about that experience. We
Yeah,
had Jay and I were talking about being an aide to Congressman Conyers. But yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome.
right, Janice. Yeah, Janice was an aide, and I tell you, it's an interesting life. And now, when I look at it, what's going on in Washington politically, I just say, oh my gosh. Uh, and I was working for a Republican congressman. I was the only African American female working for a Republican Congress from the Deep South. But Clay was such a moderate Republican,
Right.
and had done so many great things in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County. I mean, he continuously won his reelection because he was a moderate. But the last time we talked, he was saying, Daisy, I couldn't be up there now. He said, because
Wow.
it's so different. It's so different. And we talked about how he and LC would cross over to work on legislation that was good for the district, you know. Um, and that just doesn't happen now. Um, it's,
I,
it's,
I was looking at, I think it was Aubrey Melbourne's show a little bit earlier, and he was talking about just how, and I don't want to point fingers, but how crazy the Republican Party was that some of its that if some of the heroes like Ronald Reagan could see it now, he would not even recognize
Oh,
it.
they would not. They would not. And some of them, I'm still involved with the Lincoln Project Republicans, and those are the old crew line that has really been fighting this new group, and they don't even know what they are. But this group now, I call them Trumpeteers. I don't call them Republicans. I think they're Trumpeteers, and it's part of the Tea Party. If getting into the Republican Party, the Trumpeters, and they're just people who are selfish and want to take this country back um, with no idea of what legislation is all about. I mean, it's a sad day. It's a sad.
I, I guess, and I guess we're kind of going back, but I remember the days when Tip O'Neill and Newt Gingrich, Tip O'Neill and President Reagan had to bargain and work together and make decisions on things. And I mean, where have those days gone when we were Americans before we were partisan politicians
Right.
first? Um, and it's just really kind of just a little different, to say the
But when
least.
you talk about what we've been through this year, or what has happened since 2020, we can see that democracy is slowly making a change toward something that's not so positive. I mean, just today on my radio show, I talked about the governor of Texas, how he put those immigrants on a bus and did them to Vice President Kamala Harris' home. And when you think about the coldest time of the year for someone to be that inhumane and being an elected official, it's a sad day. It's really a sad day. And I said on my show that we talk about these immigrants coming in, and certainly there is something that this country is going to need to address eventually. But if we say we don't welcome them, then we need to just all go back somewhere and give this land back to the Native Americans, because America needs to understand that all of us are immigrants. We all came from somewhere else unless we are Native American.
I think that America is too hypocritical for that.
Yes, they are. You are
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, we're
I'm
too
trying to
hypocritical.
see. I'm trying to do two things. Your other guest
I
was coming.
think I see him on.
Oh, you see him on? Okay.
Can we
Let's
bring?
see. Oh,
Hey, there he is, my good friend. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, these are my cousins. This is Attorney Hubert Grimes, a retired judge, Hubert Grimes. Uh, so glad you're able to join. Been trying to do this since we've been on. Hugh, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful and happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa to you too, sir. Yes, sir. You just seem like you might be a little cold up there.
It's a tad bit.
Wow. Well, if
It
it's
takes me,
any consolation, it's not a whole lot warmer down here.
from
It's
what
not a
I've
whole
heard.
lot warmer down
uh,
here.
yeah, from what
So
I've heard. But we
this
make
is
it
like a
through.
dream. This is like the dream team of ghosts of guests. Everybody to get to have Hubert on or to have Daisy on is a great show. But man, to have them both on together is like a dream come true. And I think it's a great way for us to end the year. So our topic tonight is we're looking at the tumultuous year that 2020 was, and we're asking the question: how far have we come since then? How far have we come since 2020? Now, the way that we would normally structure a show like this is we would compartmentalize. We say how far we come socially, how far we come racially, how far we come politically, how far we become economically. We would ask those things, but I think the calendar would really dictate the comparison. If we were to just go back and look, and I don't know how many of you all remember, but the first event of the first surprising event And I mean, who knew, as sad as it was, who knew that in the early part of the year, the tragedy of the Kobe Bryant helicopter tragedy, and I can remember Kim, we were riding home from church, and Kim texted me and asked me had I heard about Kobe Bryant, and I said no, and he said he was in a helicopter accident. And I said, "Oh wow, I didn't know that. How is he?" And before I could answer, I turned it on to one of the Sirius XM stations and began to hear just how devastating that whole event was. And that kind of kicked off a chain of events. And here's the irony of that: it's sad and as devastating as all of that was, probably by July, we weren't even thinking about that. Of course, Kobe's family and friends and all of the sports, it was all in the back of our psyche, but it was not dominating us like it would have been because of all of the events that transpired. Do you all remember that was part of 2020? That was like what kicked off a cycle of very horrific events for 2020.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then immediately after that, less than a month later, we all, get hit with the pandemic. And so it's like one bad thing after another in the early days. So yes, it was, that part was very tumultuous.
Yeah,
I think the pandemic, when we look at COVID, but then we look at the pandemic, that pandemic has changed our lives forever because it was just not 20, it went on to 2021. All of the millions of people that we lost in 20 and moving on to, it continued, but it changed our lives in travel and in every other aspect of our lives. It changed.
well, so obviously the pandemic, which we are still feeling the effects of, I'm finally getting a good timeline, which we're still feeling the effects of the pandemic, but in the very midst of that, and then another irony was we're taking all of these elaborate precautions. Hubert, my wife basically locked me up in my house. Uh, I got because of underlying conditions. I would go out and walk the golf course with a pastor friend of mine 3 days a week, and I would go to the Publix down the street, and I would be gloved up and masked up. Then I go down to the Hard Rock and gas up. Well, I wasn't going anywhere, so that happened very, very rare. But going down there and gassing up from central Broward County to Hollywood, which is every bit of what 7 miles, was almost like going out of town for
Mhm.
me. So I basically lived here in where the studio is located in the house here. But in the midst of all of that, we saw the George Floyd protests. Remember, it's a pandemic. It's
Mhm.
meaning worldwide. All over the world, people were protesting and people were walking hand in hand, masked up, hand in hand. I know y'all remember that.
Yeah.
And then in the
I
midst
will.
of that, and then the other bookend to Kobe's horrific crash was the 2020 election, which we're still hearing that was stolen. So it was definitely a tumultuous period of time. And of course, you guys are chronologically advanced to the point that you could even compare it to 1968. Y'all rewind back to there. You remember how crazy that was? Dr. King's assassination, Bobby
Yeah.
Kennedy's assassination 6 months later, the Chicago riots at the
Hmm.
Democratic Convention, and America, the North, particularly just in California, just being burned out of race riots. Uh, and I thought that was as tumultuous as we would ever see in a year. Any comments on before we started to the comparison or bringing it forward?
When I think back at all of 1968 and even times up to that, one thing that I think that it's different than politically, that our elected officials could get to a point where they could work together to try and solve the problems of this country. Even in 68, with the riots and the burning of cities and all of that. Democrats and Republicans came together to address the issues of this country. I don't see that now, which to me is a bigger fear for our democracy. I don't know what can happen that will make these two parties come together to say for the good of this country.
When did that change, Hubert? When did y'all seeing that? When did you all begin to see that change?
Well, a lot of people will take it back to the election of Barack Obama. That was such a, Barack came on the scene for the purpose, if you want to say for God's ordained purpose of saving this country. If you remember, we were on the verge of economic collapse. And
Yes.
the work that he did, in spite of those who opposed him, saved this country. And yet, that was when they made a decision on the other side. If you remember, Mitch McConnell said that on the night of his swearing in
Right.
that he would do everything he could to make him a one-term president. Well, that was sort of like while McConnell represented what we might call traditional Republican politics, there were those that emerged with this whole Tea Party movement, and they began to become the most callous and the most anti anything that we have ever seen in politics before. Yes, there are people who could have different policy positions, but these guys were determined to do everything they could to try to stop, I would say, stop the rise of the black man in this country. Because they probably said that if a black man could get elected president in this country, then there was nothing that they could not do. Does that sound like a biblical verse to you? I know it does. And so they began to do everything they could. And so you see the rise of the Tea Party, and they was quote unquote the anti-tax party. And yet they came in and they literally over the next after his re-election in 12, they began to then slowly take over the Republican Party. And we see some characters who emerged on the national scene, anti-black in many respects. And they seem to, even down to the way that with how Trump came on the scene. If you really look at all the Republicans that he defeated in his quest to become the nominee in 2016, these were largely traditional Republicans. Both Daisy and I were, if we, Daisy is the Republican in the household and I'm not, but we both were hoping that Jeb Bush had gotten a nomination for president for the Republican side. Jeb actually appointed me to the circuit bench way back in 1999 when he was governor. And, we had hoped so. I mean, because we thought he represented somebody that had some good sense and could, help save, continue this country. But the stuff that Trump said and the appeal that he made to the kind of character and people in this country, for some, he was an entertainer. But for others, he spoke to their deepest fears, which was that y'all better be careful that y'all already elected this black man to be president. What are they going to do next? And we still represent, unfortunately, not just the stepchildren of America, but we represent their worst nightmare for all the wrong reasons. Because if black people really were that hateful or that vengeful towards white America, as my wife said in her radio show earlier today, then we would have killed all of them during slavery, because it was our ancestors that fed their children, fed them, and therefore they could have poisoned them if that's the kind of people we were. But we're not. And yet they still can't get it. They believe that they're seeking retribution, that if we give us the power, and that we would in turn seek retribution from them the way they treated us. And that's not true. And so we see this rise, and they speak to the worst in character of people. And yet we were amazed here in America that it was that many folks who would be willing to support a Trump. And so he conned the evangelical church with the things that he said that he would do for them, which was give them supreme conservative judges who would have to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And of course, being the kind of negotiator, he said, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. If y'all will support me, I'll do that. And that's what he did. And so they went out preaching Trumpism to all their parishioners. And it's amazing when you hear this stuff that it just still baffles me to this day that folks will still take this guy who, in times past, the church would have been saying that Trump represented everything negative, everything that the church, quote unquote, is supposed to be opposed to. Trump represents that, but yet they embraced him, and as a result of that, they have you've got these other minions that have jumped up on his side, and they're trying to follow the path that Trump has carved out. And so Trump took this attitude that even in 2020, and I'll summarize my comments, that he said that if you tell a lie long enough and keep repeating it over and over and over again, people will believe it. So here we are at the end of 22, going into 23. He's still lying about the 2020 election. And the most right-thinking people in this country know that it's a lie. But he still appeals to a certain base of people who believes his lie.
So Hubert, I was pulling for Trump to win the Republican nomination, not because I wanted him to become president. I thought that he would be the weaker candidate for the Democratic nominee to defeat. Uh, and I mean, it's just, I mean, we're all people of faith. In fact, you guys are ministers. Uh, I almost, well, I know it was all in God's will. In fact, we were riding up to the White House, and I think I shared this with Dave before. We were riding up to the White House with most of our grandkids because the producer of this show wanted her children to see the White House while Barack was still in office. And ironically, we were doing it during election night. And and I was sleeping, somebody else was driving. When we got up around Fort Drum, halfway to Orlando, Ohio fell. I said, okay, that's not surprising. It's more of a red state. And then by the time we got to Orlando, Florida had fallen. And at this point, I'm beginning to worry. And then as I'm heading towards Jacksonville, and it's apparent that he's elected, I'm asking God, Trump, and I kid you not, just as sure as I'm sitting here, God spoke to me and said, "What, you think whoever's in the White House controls things ultimately?"
Mm-hmm.
So we could go back and ask, what was the purpose of his election? And what was the purpose of Trumpism? And why have we seemingly gone from one end of the spectrum to becoming a nation that would elect a Barack Obama to electing a person like this who at the very best, right? Kim one night had a graphic that showed all of Trump's racial propensities throughout the years. But I wanted to give him credit when he just was a crafty politician who appealed to that base. But at the very least, God used him to show us that America is still a very, very racist country. So let me make that the first talking point. Since 2020, how far have we progressed as a nation as far as racism is concerned?
Wow. And I know I took up a lot of time on this last answer, but I
You
was,
have to be careful, Dozell. You got a lawyer on, so we're gonna have to interject with a lawyer.
He's a lawyer and a
look,
preacher. That's a tough combination,
yeah, but look who was on the other side. He's held their own quite well over these last 30 years. Uh, you know, I think that the revelation continued to unfold. Um, I believe that the things that have been shown to us regarding this whole era that we're in right now has really begun to show us that we still got to wake up. Daisy and I were actually riding together this morning, and we were listening actually to Sirius XM, and there was a clip of a doctor who was being interviewed. He was talking about so many of the things that happened over the last 100 years and efforts that they made in order to try to wipe us out as a race. And it went back even to the mid 1800s when they started using medications and all other forms of what. And I know Daisy will get that word right for me because I was trying to pronounce it earlier. The efforts that it was eugenics, the father of eugenics that started this process, and they've done everything they could to, in many ways, to try to wipe out Black folks, diminish our population. In many of the ways that it happened with the Jewish community in during Germany time of Hitler, and we're still seeing some spinoffs of that even today. While it took on the effects of, you know, with the rise of the resistance with Black Lives Matter, it showed that most people, I would say, most people, black and white, and I've said this before, they basically get along. They've been raised together in schools. They attend and socialize together. They're part of athletic teams. So for the most part, but you still got this core group that seems to be fearful that they're quote unquote being replaced. And if you remember when they had that the Charlottesville situation
Right.
that occurred, and they were saying the Jews will not replace us.
Right.
They're these same people have promoted this so-called replacement theory,
Replacement
and as a
theory.
result of that, they've said that blacks and Jews are trying to replace white folks here in this country, and most of us look at them like saying, "What in the heck are they talking about?"
We'll
We
replace
just
white men. White men.
exactly, exactly. So this is just unfortunately this is something that's real, and we've got to educate our children not to hate, but we got to sort of educate them to be aware, so that they don't just assume that everything is hunky dory, everything is that they are accepted in every respect. And then if you fast forward and you come up with people like and these so-called national commentators who get a lot of play, like Candace Owens and even Kanye West, the stuff they're saying, white lives matter. Well, they fail to understand that when the phrase Black Lives Matter was coined, it was saying that we are always viewed as being at the bottom of the barrel as a race of people in this country. And we know that if Black Lives matter, all the others lives already matter. So that
All
just means that we matter, everybody matters. But they have tried to turn that around and turn that against us. And even in our own state, with the efforts of our governor, trying to ban critical race theory. And critical race theory was never taught in college. It was never taught in high school or middle school. That was a law school course. And it
Right.
started about the time I was in law school. And it really was just another way of looking at all of the legal challenges and the cases decided, the court opinions, the laws written that were literally bit by bit uh, taking away a block after block of the progress that we made in the area of affirmative action. And so they've dusted off something that was 40 plus years old. And it was really just a discussion among lawyers and law school professors. And they tried to use that as a weapon. They weaponized it to try to get people in fear. The whole critical race theory is going to make white children hate America. And that's so far from the truth, but it becomes a political ploy that's easily used. And that's the problem that we have, one of the many.
And now,
So
Dozell, I look at, you say, uh, how do we get to this point of what's happening? I think God is trying to tell us something. When you said that, you asked the Lord, how did Trump how did this happen? And the Lord answered you and gave you the answer that Trump still wasn't in charge. I think that from a spiritual standpoint, that God is trying to tell us something. I just don't know if we really getting the message that you all in this country have used my church and has exploited me. When you look at all the things that's happening in this country and how it's being used, all of the negative things that's happening politically have been pushed by the white evangelical church. And I know you may differ with me on that as a clergyman,
no, 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 no,
but
no, not at all. Not at all.
they have not they have not stood up against anything that has been done to the least of God's people.
No.
And I think the Lord is saying to us, I'm tired of you using my church and my name for your benefit and your gain. So I'm going to expose it all. I'm going to let this next generation see just how you have been for centuries of years. I'm going to let them see what you did to the Native Americans. I'm going to let them see what you did to the Japanese. I'm going to let them see, I'm going to let your children see all that you have done. And on Sunday morning, you went to church and claimed that you were fine.
Well, you know, and just on the other side of the break, we'll pick up with where have we moved spiritually since 2020. But when Hubert was talking about the evangelical church, no, contrary, Daisy, my and almost ashamedly, I'll say that I was educated at the Southern Baptist Seminary. I got my MDiv at the Southern Baptist Seminary, but I want to quickly throw the disclaimer out there. It was not because I espoused any of their theology. It was just for the basic biblical education, which I would theologize myself. So when you said earlier, Hubert, you used the term, when you talk about evangelical church, I'm thinking they're not the evangelical church, they're the hypocritical church. Because for you, and I read, what's the guy's name? David Muller, and he and I worked together. He's been the president of Southern Seminary now for 20 some years. He wrote this he wrote his justification for supporting Trump. He wrote his justification for supporting Trump's reelection. And I think he was running at the time for the president of the Southern Baptist Convention. So he's kind of playing it down the middle. And Bernard, I'm going to come to your comments in just a second. Thank you for joining us. And I was just saying, man, how hypocritical can you guys be? This guy has sat there and said, you referred to Charlottesville, there's good people on both sides. He's done that, and as his term progressed, he became more and more emboldened with his racist slant to the right. I'm still giving him that benefit of the doubt. His outreach to the right, and I'm thinking, how in the world can you come back and support him? And when you look at the it's just an agenda of hypocrisy, and I have no respect. When you're always talking about evangelizing our community, I say no. It's more like imperialism in our community.
Yes,
because when you want to put that crazy theology in the minds in the hearts of our folk, that just ain't it. We come from a motif of liberation theology, which has no color. James Cone would say that God is always on the side of the oppressed. So that's what grabs us and connects us to the indigenous people of this nation, the Hispanic people that they're trying to point fingers to at the border, and our Asian brothers and sisters, and everybody who they're trying to make the replacement theory. And just know this: replacement theory is pointed at us because we're the threat right now. We've had a black president, and we now have pretty much a black vice president, and the Congress is Georgia is turning increasingly to a purple towards a blue state, and the replacement theory, if it wasn't us, if it was Hispanics or if it was Asians, this racist nation would still rise up against it because it sees that it's losing its grip on power. And how unfortunate it is, instead of Jesse Jackson would say, we all coming to the table and being one color, one American, it's just so unfortunate and it's so hypocritical. I'm going to come back and address Henry and Bernard's comments, and we're going to look at how far have we progressed spiritually since 2020 when what's the song, God is trying to tell you something.
That's right. God is trying to tell us something.
We certainly should have been alive and alert to what's happening. We're going to go to break, and I've got permission. We're going to run the show to 9:15 tonight. If you all can hang with us and the makeup. And we're going to go to break, and we'll be right back. So the producer of the show asked me tonight, was there a shout out? And I said, yeah, there is one. Uh, but I'm not going to give you a graphic because you automatically have the graphic, and we just had it. I want you to put that closing graphic back up, Madam Producer. This tonight's shout out. Tonight's shout out is to GoGigaWorld.com. We're shouting you out. We're shouting you out. Could you put the graphic up so people can see? I don't know if maybe rolling the loop would be difficult, but we're shouting you out tonight because you grabbed one, as a disc jockey in Jacksonville used to say, the little short, fat, bald-headed man. One little short, fat, bald-headed man got in front of a camera in the middle of a pandemic, in the midst of being bored and being isolated and lonely, and started doing live and just to try to see how it would work out. And who knew that 2 years later that it would become a show like this. Go Giga World picked this show up and began to produce it and to show it nationwide, to do the marketing for it. It does also New Life, the Church Without Walls, does all of our work. And you saw the people that they were just who they have on their show and who they advertise and who they produce. You saw Anthony Hamilton, you saw Sounds of Blackness, and they're just an awesome outfit that has that is a minority company that has picked up during the pandemic and doing all of these virtual productions and website building and all of these things. It's a group of sisters, and I just applaud them. So we shout you out on this last Monday night in the year of 22, the year of our Lord 2022. We shout you out for the work you do, for the mission you're on, and we speak that the best for you all is yet to come. And they're going to be making a major announcement. I won't get ahead of it, but they're going to be making a major announcement about some things that they're going to do over into the new year. The dialogue with those is ecstatic to be a part of it. So we shout you out tonight. GoGigaWorld.com, and thank you for what you contribute to all of us. And sadly, at the mid show tonight, we're dedicating tonight's show to the loving memory of one of my heroes, Franco Harris. And in dedicating this show, it has been an end of a year. I have dedicated this show to some people that are very close and dear to me, and tonight, so that when I heard about Franco's transition on Wednesday morning, I was numb. I wasn't. It didn't floor me because it has just been that kind of year. We have lost a lot of stalwarts at the end of the year very suddenly as he left us suddenly. But we shout Franco out, and if anyone saw the game on Saturday night, which had long been planned to commemorate the greatest football player in the history of the NFL, the Immaculate Reception, where he picked the ball up off of his shoe tops and ran it in on a fourth down, 20 seconds left in the game, and ran it in for the winning touchdown that really propelled a franchise that was mirrored not in mediocrity, but was mirrored in absolute chaos. They had never won anything, been to the playoffs twice in 30-some years, and now Pittsburgh Steelers, when you talk about them, you talk about dominance. You talk about a current coach who has never had a losing season, is challenged this year. You talk about a franchise that did not lose their first 4 Super Bowls. They emerged from the American Football Conference and won their Super Bowls. A team that almost had everybody, almost is a Hall of Famer, a gold jacketer, which Franco is. And on Saturday night, they were going to commemorate. They did still do. They retired Franco's jersey. It's only the 3rd jersey in the Steelers' history that's been retired, and it was to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. And Franco went home on Tuesday night, and he told his wife he was tired. And she went into I think she went to brush her teeth, and when she came back, he had gone on to glory. But Franco Harris was not just a great football player, but he was a super humanitarian who did so much for the city of Pittsburgh, for the state of Pennsylvania, for Italian Americans and African American and all downtrodden individuals, and just was a beautiful person to be around. He was not just that football player that Joe Paterno once said, if you told him to run through a brick wall, he would count the bricks before he took off running. Franco was just a great guy. And we love you, big guy. And look, we'll see you in the morning, buddy. Tonight's dialogue is dedicated to the loving memory of number 32, Franco Harris. It was only fitting that the Raiders came back on the last few minutes and won that game the other night, just as he had on the 50th anniversary. 50 years ago, the Immaculate Reception, when he picked up that ball and ran it. Okay, let's go to some of the. Bernard says no substantial improvement racially. Oppression is being exposed more. What is he saying? More clearly. Look at things like voting rights, gerrymandering, resistance to CRT, continuing gentrification and health disparities. Absolutely, you all have already called out some of those things. Listen, the turning back the hands on voter rights is I would say it's un-American, but guess what? This is the new American. This is what the new America is coming to if we don't change it. And Henry said, if we as black people rise up, if we as rise up together as one on one accord, we'll see a massive change. But until then, we won't experience the change we desire. A good point, Henry. I say this. I say, Daisy, you're native of South Florida. If we could embrace and join arm in arm with the Hispanic community, which I think we've lost the Cuban community in Dade County. It has turned Dade County into a red county, and that was always a county that you could depend on for moderate voting and moderate thinking and so forth. So we'll see. So I think we all agree that since 2020. Now here's the thing about 2020.
But Dozell, let me say something interject something with the last young man who said that when we get it together, and I'm a firm believer that we have to get it together as African Americans also, because when you look at the percentage of African Americans who did not vote in 2020 and who did not vote in 2022, there is no reason if African Americans have voted in the state of Florida, every African American who was registered to vote had voted for Val Demings, she would have won. We got the data on that. We have the data on that. And several even local elections here in Volusia County. If blacks had voted, they would have won. So though we know that we have some challenges with the majority community, we've got some challenges within our own community that we need to resolve. And one is voting. And we can make a difference. And I tell you, even though they have made all of these new voting restrictions, if we decided that in spite of what they do, we're going to still vote, they'll change it. You see what happened in Georgia. Those folks in Georgia were organized. They kept on, they did not stop when Stacey Abrams lost the last election. They went back and reorganized, and they did not. And they were fighting against millions and millions of dollars. But all it took was black folks going to vote. And that is how Warren won. We've got to fight them that way. L.C. Hastings used to say that every time we learn the rules, they change them. So what we have to keep doing is following the new rule. If they make a rule, we need to learn it. And that's what we've got to do. That's one of, I'm glad that your caller said that, because that's what we've got to do as black folks. We got to get ourselves together. We've got to get our children together. And I don't want to be a soap opera with that, but I'm glad that the young man said that, because some of this is on us too.
I'm glad you hit that point, Daisy, because I don't know if you know, I do voter registration now for Faith in Florida.
Mhm.
Work with Dr. LaVon Bracy, and
Yes.
do you know that 27% of Black Florida went to the polls, and that is
Hmm.
despicable when you got somebody of Val Demings' caliber running statewide. And in fact, the initial polls showed her defeating Marco Rubio, and the Republican Party poured millions of dollars into this state to make sure that that didn't happen. Now, as you know, in 2020, was it 2020? Uh, uh, Not
Andrew,
2020, what was the last,
Andrew Gillum.
2018.
Right.
2018, Andrew Gillum fell 30,000 votes short of winning.
Right.
Now, had he been at the head of the ticket this time without any complications, it begs the question, would we have turned out to the polls? And I say it should not have taken the governor's race to get us there. We had a chance to affect change with the U.S. senator from a person who was highly qualified.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
trying not to write my state off as just being red, and there's another word I could put behind it starts with an N, but I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to say our state is not going to turn into that kind of state. I want to run on. Bernard Mason takes us into the next segment of it. He says he put the question. He says spiritual improvement after 2021. I mean after 2020. Has there been any spiritual improvement in our as we as a people or we as a nation? I want to lead that off by saying, let me just put a let me end the racial segment. In the midst of the craziness that the Trump victory brought, when I saw the protests during the George Floyd protest, I saw as many white folk embracing Black Lives Matter as I saw whites. And so, of course, they got labeled Antifa, but we know that's not the case. So all is not lost. There are people of goodwill all around the world, and everybody does not want to turn back the hands of the clock for their own political. But as far as spiritual improvement, now here's the question I was having this question, was conversation with a preacher late into the morning hours this morning. Since the pandemic, most of us, during the pandemic, and I don't know if you guys' ministry went virtual, most of us went virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And my ministry is very small. You know where we were down in Dania days, and we gave up our location and started renting. And so we're now 2 Sundays uh, in person, and then we're 2 Sundays virtual. But for some of the churches, and we could use gosh, the big church down in Miami Gardens, Artie Jackson's church.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
He had just built, because poor Artie was having like 4 services on Saturdays and 3 on Sundays, and so they built that big cathedral, and now I think they're being challenged to fill that. And all of the churches, when I would do virtual, we came on at 9. We've always worshiped at 9. When we finish, I would leave the studio and come to the couch and just watch churches across the nation on YouTube. All the churches I worshiped through in all my life, and now they have tried to start back in person, and they're not getting the people to come back. What is the church? What happens with the church from here? And I don't know. I know you guys are part of almost like a mega church. How is attendance and participation at your church, and what are the trends that you are seeing as the pandemic seemingly is easing?
Well, the pandemic did cause some challenges, and at Calvary, unfortunately, they did not stop. They only stopped for about a week or two, maybe a month. Uh, they stopped having on-site worship, but because of the pressure that the uh, clergy received, they started face to face. So Hubert and I discontinued. We weren't going. You know, I have underlying condition, so we were
Yeah.
not going. We were going to do it virtually, and we started kind of doing what you were doing, looking at several other churches also online during that pandemic. I think that overall, and I'll say for the Black church, I think that I have some young friends, some young former students who are pastoring now, and they said that during the pandemic, when they were virtual, their income went up tremendously. Their receipts in the church went up tremendously, and they decided to study that to find out why. And they found out that many young people like having worship experience online. They didn't have to get up, get dressed to come to church, but that church was able to have a very inclusive kind of an engaged kind of virtual worship experience to the extent that they started doing children's church and everything online. And their membership supported that. He is now seeing that now that they're by face to face, your older traditional member comes, but some of the younger members still watch online. So what he's doing is doing both of them. He's doing face to face and he's continuing to do virtual. I think that the Black church is going to will have to look at itself and see what it needs to do to meet the younger parishioner. I know in the ALB church, that's one of the big discussions now because they are losing younger members. Because the younger members are looking, in my opinion, more at ministry. They want, they want to be more involved with the ministry of the church, the outreach and all of that. So I think the pandemic showed a lot of that, brought a lot of that out. What is the church all about? I like it when they say the church without walls, because the church is truly beyond the walls of the sanctuary.
So we are without walls congregation, and
And that's great.
we're real small, but we're doing a major into our unhoused population.
Yeah.
That's a population I've had the opportunity. Madam Producer, bring the co-host up, please. That's one of the things that I have really been a part of with this Faith in Florida initiative with the voter registration, and we're gonna be a blessing to them. Our co-host is joining us. KB, what's up, man?
Hey man, what's going on, bro?
You got it. You got it. These are our cousins, Daisy and Hubert. Daisy, well, of course, Daisy wasn't down here, but we've lived all over the country. And when we moved to South Florida, it's the only place we ever had family. Well, we had family in Daytona for a brief period, but all our cousins were down here, so we've been settled in. We even started a ministry together. We talking about
how you doing?
Well, I mean, Kim is still in. You're still in Jacksonville.
Yes, ma'am. I'm still in Jacksonville.
I mean, we're still so close, though. It's a shame that this Mayfield family cannot get together. I know it's not the show that we need to be talking about that, but
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I come down there twice a month for a week at a time to Miami, and I usually, go by and see Dozell. But you're right.
And I'm right here in Daytona. I'm right here in Daytona.
Oh, you're in Daytona?
Yes.
That's not where you've always been, is it?
I've been here since I met that other man, that you see up there. 30 years.
I thought you were further down there in South Florida.
I was in South Florida. Came here to Bethune-Cookman to work and was only going to stay for a year or two and met him, and things changed.
Rest is history, right?
Yeah.
Church, how you doing, sir?
Wonderful, wonderful. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Kim, we're talking about we're still drawing these correlations between to see how we have progressed or regressed since the craziness that 2020 was, and we're talking about the effects of the pandemic on the church. And your church never did stop. Well, you stopped meeting maybe for a month or so, right? And then you all came back.
We could discontinue our service for a number of months. We went a little longer than most churches, but we did discontinue it for a number of months and went online. And after a while, we went back to, in-person service. So,
okay. Now there was a church in Jacksonville. In fact, Dozell is a member of that church. I think that's Dozell Commons Church that suffered a lot of losses out of there. And I was very concerned because, I know Dozell had some illnesses. And he was a member of that church. And then there was a church down, I think, around Sarasota or somewhere They never shut down, and they suffered quite a few losses, and that was this mindset that if you can't come to church, God will protect you, but God gives us common sense. You know,
Yeah.
you're in the middle of a
Yeah.
pandemic and sitting up under each other. How wise is that? You know, so I'm just wondering. Okay, beyond attendance and money, because I think what's happening now, monies were up, but monies are leveling out. That's why you see pastors shutting down the online service for a week or so to try to coax people back to services and so forth. But beyond that, my question is not just attendance, because, like you say, young people what they look for, Hubert, is ministry. My question is: has the service of the church adapted to the moment? And what are the services? What's the ministries? What ministries are going forth since the pandemic? Since you got people that's decided they're just going to worship virtually, what ministries do we have for them? Are we still reaching out? The original churches, you know, in the New Testament were house churches. They were not coming to a temple or a building. They were house churches. Those are the churches that established with the 12 disciples after our Lord was ascending into heaven. So what can the church do to remain relevant after the pandemic of 2020?
I think the most important word is the word connection. One of the
Yes.
things that we experienced, that Daisy and I experienced, I would say, during the recent um, lead up to the election, was working with several of what we might call smaller churches here in the Daytona Beach area. What comes back to mind was the feeding programs that were carried out, that were a part of joint efforts. That were right after the hurricane. We got hit twice this past season. Got hit by Ian, and of course later by Nicole. And both times, to witness churches starting to reach out to try to collect those things needed and to try to help feed people, to try to help provide for them the things that they needed. But one of the important things is, and I would say that Daisy has been working on this organization called VCAL, Volusia County African American Leadership Council, and it's made up of leaders from all the various community organizations, from the frats and the sororities, from churches, and other CBOs. Uh, and of course, collectively working together is, in my opinion, one of the things that has helped us deal with a lot of different local community issues. And I think that we've seen believe it or not, the smaller churches have been probably more involved. One example she talked about even today was the fact that at the middle school, and you probably will remember Campbell Middle School, it's located in the heart of the community, but some of the students were experiencing a real downturn in their academic performance following the whole pandemic and the remote learning. And so the principal and Daisy were talking, and she said that unless we get some help with these kids, a lot of them are not going to be able to pass to their next grade level. And so they came up with a strategy to begin to do Saturday school. The principal said, I can get the money to fund the teachers to do so, but we need help with providing food for these kids, because many of them won't be able to get a meal if they have to come to school, and vice versa. And so we, through reaching out to various groups in the community, and I will say that many of the smaller churches were the first ones to come forth and to donate. And we fed those kids for, I think, 12, 16 weeks, something like that, on Saturdays. And as a result of that, every one of those kids that came to the Saturday program passed those exams and moved on to the next level in their schooling. I say that because it was the combined effort of the community, including the churches. The churches are the ones that we look to for leadership, but all too often in this younger generation, we see that many of them are not waiting for the church to become the leaders. They, in fact, are working amongst, and they put a lot of emphasis in their social organizations, but many of them are social organizations with a purpose. Good example, the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority raised something like $2 million in a 24-hour period. And they've done that successfully for the last, I think, 3 years now, giving at least $50,000 to each of the HBCUs. And I don't know if they've reached all 100 of them yet, but they have been doing that. And again, that was based upon getting their members to give $35 each, as well as, of course, recruiting others to do the same. And that's just an example. And I look at these as these. So the church is in a period of social consciousness, and it's important for the needs of our people to be met. And the role is whether or not, if the churches don't take the leadership role to do so, there are other groups that will. And we just have to make sure. And I guess it goes back to what you were saying earlier. God said, just because Trump won the election back in 2016 didn't mean that he was going to be the one in charge, that God is still in charge. And so if we won't do it through the churches, God will use other methods in order to be able to reach his people.
Wow.
He's not limited. He's not limited. And so I say that as a challenge that all of us have to continue the ministry of social justice, the ministry of working to educate our people, the ministry to help feed our people. Because what did Jesus require of us? To feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and set the captives free. And that's the work that we have to continue doing, because we are well away. We are a long ways away from seeing that fully materialize.
And Dozell, I'm a little different from Hubert in my method on how to work with the churches, because the president of the Black Clergy Alliance sits on my council. And I tend to tell them, and I got this from Matt Cain Carter. Matt Cain Carter said everybody want to be in charge. That's why we got so many black churches on every corner, because everybody want to be in charge. But when I'm talking to the black clergy here, I tell them, stop being first envious of each other, because that's a problem we have. If envious of each other, I say, and stop saying what Calvary is doing, and Calvary is taking your members. Because if you're a good pastor and you're ministering to your people, they're going to stay there. Right. But what we need to do as a black church, and we've got them really thinking and doing some of it now, is you may not be able to do it by yourself, but if we come together as the Black Clergy Alliance, together we can do a lot of things. And they are seeing it now, that if they work collectively together, we can feed people, we can close them. When we had the hurricane, I called them, they stopped bringing clothes out to the Red Cross, over to the Ocean Center. They stopped bringing food, the things, because they started working as a unit and not separately by denomination. And that's how we do. And when members see that, and see that their church is addressing the needs of the community, they want to get involved. They want to pay their tithes. They want to do all of these things because they see their church addressing the needs of the people.
Okay, so I don't do a good job of telling time. So I was just about to ask him a question. Well, here's what we're gonna do. He just sent me a note. He had to get out. I wanted to ask. I wanted to move over, and I really wanted him back for the police thing, because that's what he's doing now. He's as a result of the protest in Miami during the George Floyd protest, Black Lives Matter. The vice president of the Miami Heat came out and spoke against the Miami Police Department because they enacted a lot of the measures that your governor had enacted. And so I think some of his comments were proven to be non-factual. So as a makeup, the Miami Heat contributes heavily to diversity training to the Miami Police Department. And my brother, along with a former attorney for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's a former FBI agent and a former federal prosecutor, they now do diversity training because Kim was a local law enforcement, so he can bring that piece. They come down here, as you heard him say, they come down here twice a month, and they're actually doing diversity training in police departments all over the nation. I wanted to see, since the pandemic, and I'm gonna just try to borrow a few more. We can maybe run to 9:30. Just 2 or 3 other topics I want to come see how far we've come since 2020. You know, 2020 was the most horrific because it was caught on camera. It was the most horrific police killing of George Floyd and it exposed a lot of police killings that had been going on and that were still going on. And I want to ask y'all, do you think that's changed? Do you think that the police have become more sensitive or sensitized that we're not going to put up with that and that we're reversing that trend of horrific police murders of black people? Do you think that's occurred in
I,
any substantial number since 2020?
I would like to think so, but I realize that there are a number of cases that are still going on, and unfortunately, there's still a lot of officers that are not, I want to say, properly trained, or they're scared, and they've, if you're in that job, that's not a job for you to, to be in if you're a scared person. Last week there was a conviction for the officer out there in Texas for the shooting death of Atalia Jefferson. And this young woman was inside of her home, and the officer shot into the house because they had gotten a call, and it said that they thought that somebody had broken in the house, but the young lady was in the house with her nephew, and he one shot and killed her. But he ended up getting convicted of manslaughter, and I think sentencing was pending on him. But that's just the latest example, which is that people will take the next step of calling them out and demanding justice. And and thank God we've got some prosecutors that have got the guts to charge these people when they do wrong. What I'm in talking with some of my law enforcement friends, though, you end up with hearing that some of them are still quote unquote fearful, or they're reactive. And from your own career that every organization has a or some bad apples, and but the thing is that how do you weed those people out? I actually work with the group here through the Bethune-Cookman Center for Law and Social Justice, Dr. Randy Nelson, who goes around training law enforcement agencies on community engagement, which is a way of trying to help to resolve many of these kind of issues, racial issues, interactions between police and community before they get started. But it's a lot of work yet to be done. I hope that we progress some, but there's still too many isolated killings, and that we're seeing happening across the country. And some might say, well, are there more killings, or are we just more? Are we more able to because of media, able to focus attention upon those things? And I think it may be both. But I hope that we can, that's which is the other reason why I've been working on with the criminal justice program there at Bethune as outsider and trying to encourage more of their young people to pursue careers in law enforcement. I mean, we've got right now, we've got two nephews that are involved in law enforcement, one down in South Florida, one over in the Tampa area. And certainly we don't want them to be harmed in any fashion, but they also know that they got a job to do, and it's a dangerous job every day of the week. But we still have, and we need police, but we got to make sure that those police officers recognize it and respect us as individuals and as people, and not feel that they every time they see a black person they can just treat them any kind of way.
Now, I attend the trainings that Quentin Williams and Kim does down here. The company is, or the group is called Dedication to Community. And I actually, they ask, there are sessions where they actually, the police have to stand up and so I'm caught in between. Here I am, a former policeman, but I'm a minister, representative of the community, and I was put in that position even when I worked there, Hubert. There was a killing on North Ridgewood. I kind of stood up for, so, but I listen to these officers, and as you say, they're recruiting heavily because police is no longer a job that people are running to. And a lot of it is because of the pressure that has been brought on because of these killings and rogue officers and their actions. But sometimes I listen very sympathetically to these officers because they're saying, man, I go to work. He said, you always have the constant, thing, am I coming home tonight? See, but now it's like you go from being somewhat respected to being the worst scum in the community. And I can't, because these are human beings, and some are well intentioned, many of them, most are. and I can't help but feel kind of like feel their pain on that. And it's one bad apple can just ruin everything. You know, somebody can be in our family. It could be one person in the family can be that bad apple, but none of us are any good because of that one person. And that's kind of how it happens. And I'm discouraged to hear you say that it hadn't improved. I was thinking that maybe it was improved because of all the exposure that they got on cop killings, you know, police murders of our people. I was hoping that was improving. I'm sad to hear that it's not.
It's
Uh,
a long journey, and like you said, you get one or two isolated people, and but what I am seeing that has improved is that the willingness on the part of the prosecutor's office to hold those individuals accountable. Now you still got to go through grand jury proceedings, and in order to, when an officer is charged, but that also depends upon the presentation is done by that prosecutor to that group of 12 individuals. So I will say that, you know, I hate to say the jury is still out because, like I said, we have great respect for law enforcement. As a judge, you quite well know I worked with law enforcement for 25 years. And I still admire those that were doing their job and doing it well. But those who, on the other hand, chose to try to use their badge to intimidate people and to, in effect, harm people, no, I really don't have any respect for them.
Joseph,
okay.
one thing I think that we can do to help change it is the community working with our police department. We did that here in Volusia County. We worked with the Police Chief Association. Hubert and the minority elected officials worked with putting a pamphlet together, and it was, "What do you do when a police officer stops you?" And we did a lot on the radio show. We took that pamphlet around to different churches, different community groups. We met with them. We met with all of our police chiefs. They really worked with us on developing this brochure, but it also enlightened them about our community because we were able to listen to them about some of their fears and teach them about our culture. And
Okay.
it had been, I
That's
think
good
it has
stuff.
been, yeah, I think it has been very beneficial.
That's
I
great.
mean, for the Volusia County Chief Association, every chief in Volusia County signed off on this project. And we had a big press conference when we got ready to release it. But we had to let them know we don't want bad cops, and we're going to deal with it when it happens. But we also going to support the blue. We're going to support
That's
y'all. And when our people are wrong, we're going to stick up with what is right. We're not
And
going to
it's like,
defend them when it's wrong.
that's
in fact,
awesome.
a great example of that, Daisy, was when unfortunately there was a police killing by a young black guy who ultimately became an interstate manhunt.
Yeah.
And of course, the black community was very supportive of this, the officer's family,
Okay.
and the entirety of it all. And that's the beauty of having black folks in positions of power and influence because they know what's going on, and that's an opportunity for us to work together.
Yeah. And
That,
we did.
that, that,
We came out with this whole community, and we had just as many black families out there and people out there standing up with our police department saying we wanted this fellow caught and we wanted the court system to deal with it.
that's awesome. We got about 5 minutes. I wanted to get ask two more questions about how far have we come since 2022. First, Madam Producer is over she's going to ask a couple questions of our listeners, of our viewers.
Yeah, I just want to share a few comments. We have one from Henry Glenn. Sad to say, but older people are afraid of change in the church. That's when you were talking about the church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
that's very true. And,
That's
and
true.
and you know what? We even have to be sensitive to that, don't we?
Yeah. We have to. And funny because I was talking about Sister Joyce the other day, and she would say, "Well, I like our new pastor in Orlando, but he's kind of not. I like traditional. I like the hymns, and I like this, and And I said, but he's trying to save souls, and young folks ain't gonna come to him all that.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
That's the truth.
Wow.
For old people, we don't like change, but
Yeah,
the church
that's
The scriptures say to serve the present age. That's what the Lord said. Serve the present age.
So, panel. Let me put it in these terms. You know, we're becoming chronologically advanced when I have to think in terms of my cousin Joyce as being considered a part of the older crowd. That's it. That's it. Go ahead, Madam Producer.
All right, we have one from Bernard. Our governor is a smart Trump.
True.
You
True.
know what? He scares me to no absolute end.
Yeah.
I just hope that he gets derailed. I was in a conference a few weeks ago. Thank you, ma'am. We were in a conference a few weeks ago, and a state senator was with us, and that senator said to us, "Just watch. This group has said this Republican legislature has said that when you run for office, you have to let your current office, you have to resign immediately. But just watch and see, don't they try to make a change for DeSantis?" And it was less than 24 hours
Yep.
that a group of senators came together and said that they don't think he comes under that, and if so, the cause is greater and we'll have to mitigate it. So hypocrisy abounds. That's all I'm going to say about it. Two other topics I want to rush through in these last 90 seconds or whatever we got. Medically, since 2020, how have we as a people come on the other side of the pandemics? If you look at the pandemic, if you look at the statistics, they are alarming. We died the most, we incurred the most, we suffered the most. The only other demographic that exceeded us was the older population.
Mm-hmm.
What causes that, guys?
Well, with the pandemic, are you talking about during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, yeah, since from the onset of the pandemic to now, we have been the greater victims percentage-wise. The only comparative demographic has been the elderly.
I think a lot of it we have to go back, and we have to admit some of it is systematic racism is a problem with the employment. People getting back into that market. Many of those businesses that had closed down temporarily during the pandemic, when those companies reopened, they brought back fewer people. And who were they going to bring back? Not us. We weren't going to be on top of it.
No, I'm not.
Are you talking about the medical? Are you talking about the medical side?
Medically, yeah.
Medically, though.
Yeah, who died the most? Who were infected the most?
Health disparity.
Yes.
That's it. That's somebody say systematic racism. Yes, indeed, and health disparity. We know that we have more people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, and it's not that they don't care; they can't afford the insurance. I mean, I have a friend. I'm talking about doctor, and she's trying to help a patient who's a very good friend of mine. She's caught up in the donut hole, and she can't get her medication out. Because of that, she got to wait till next year to be able to do that. I'm in
the same boat.
Yeah, and that's a real problem. And it should not be that way. Why in America, we have these other third world countries where you can get your medicine and all of that from Canada and all these, and in America we have not yet worked it out.
Well, the president has tried to bring down the cost, particularly of diabetic care. And he's come under, and I mean, when you just talk about hypocrisy, it just shows the money, the money, and those who back those who are in office. They have fought against it tooth and nail. But here's someone who's trying to make medication affordable. When I went to Medicare, I lost one of my chief medications, and now I'm going to another insurance company next week, and I can get my medication back. Otherwise, it was $1,000 a month. And so now I'll be able to get it back with the new company. So the pandemic saw a lot of us wiped out. And if you just look at the list of, entertainers who died or famous people, and if I had a graphic on the screen, you'll see the disparity there.
Yeah.
And you're talking about people with ends. So it's just, I mean, I'm not trying to make it a racial thing because if anything should have brought the world together, it was the pandemic.
Right.
But it's just the reality of it. Now let's do, before we close out, let's do talk about the economic disparity. Have things gotten better for us as a whole? Are we improving on the other side of the pandemic now? I know that shut everything down. Is that improving? Do you see a good forecast? We know stocks are really down. In fact, it's time to buy stocks now because it won't be down long. But are we? Do you see recovery for us, or are we just on a total downslide since 2020?
And now, you know what? We as a people have always managed to survive in even in
Yes,
hard
sir.
economic times. I think that there are more Black entrepreneurs now as a result of the pandemic. There are more people working, particularly younger people working from home. And as a result of that, they're able to expand their reach, yet still working for these companies. But the big thing is that there's been a rise in entrepreneurship. And many of these kids, young people who previously worked for traditional companies had decided that they could go out on their own and still do well. And so I think that from that side, we don't hear about that as much. The reports are that the stock market is up, the stock market is down, but the vast majority of our people are not affected by the stock market. Maybe they should be, but the reality of it is that I think that God is still taking care of his people. He's still taking care of his people. So if you combine the spiritual with the economic, with the social justice, and all the things that you've talked about here tonight, I think that we're making progress in spite
Well,
of the challenges that we are confronted by.
I think if we were to put it into theological terms, we would say the reminder that all things work together for good for we who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Everybody can't accept that, but I think that's reality. Bernard is saying before we sign out, we are waking up as a people to playing and winning economically. Absolutely. That's just what Hubert said. And I think that's a great point, guys. Great point. Daisy, Hubert, any closing comments? You guys have this has been a great show. You've been great. And we kind of stayed on topic too.
Yeah.
Any
No.
close?
Thank you for the invite, and we're gonna have to talk to each other, others as family, and I get Janice on so we can get together as a family. My daughter just bought a farm outside of. How far is she from Connsville, Hubert? Outside of Athens, about 15-20 minutes
Okay.
outside of Athens. But I know we go through Livonia and Connsville. But I think we need to get together, go up to North Carolina, or do something with the Mayfield family.
Well, my generation of cousins, of course, you and my mom are first cousins, but my generation of cousins, we're pretty close. We have a thread, text thread, and we're in contact one way or another, like at least once a week. And so Friday night, we're doing an end of year. It's not a reunion, but it's just to catch up on each other so that we can see each other. We're doing it via Zoom. And
Mm-hmm.
so we'll send a link. We love to have, have you stop in and just, say something and remind us of the legacy, just as you're saying right there. So,
Okay.
yeah. Hubert, man, this is just a delight. And I'm gonna be hitting y'all up shortly and ask you to come back on. Sorry we ran over tonight, but this was just too vast of a topic to just kind of gloss over. And we're so grateful for you all coming on, and I'm just elated to have you on, bro. We're trying to do that for a while. Just
Well, thank you.
tell us about. But before you tell us about your book, Daisy, tell us. Give us the information on your show now that it's available for everybody.
Oh, okay. My show is called The People's Voice, and it's on 106.3 FM here in Daytona Beach. And you can go online to, you can pick it up on the internet with going to 106, no point, just 1063fm.com. And I'm on Mondays at 12 o'clock.
Okay, and it is now All you got, that takes you right to the web page. It's no longer tied into a private
Right.
subscription
No
service.
longer tied to iTunes.
Yeah. So please, yeah, her topics are very very intriguing. So please hop on. I'm checking out the show from the day, and just hop on and check out at noon.
Yeah, he was saying he's gonna have to get me a bodyguard, especially when I start talking about politics. He said he's gonna have to get me a bodyguard.
That's pretty funny. Hubert, tell us about your show on the way out, please. Tell me about your book.
Well, I actually have a podcast that I do also on the second Wednesday of each month. You can find it at artistfirst.com under the GL Henderson Hour. And I've been doing that show for close to a year now. And it's an opportunity to interact with in much the same way. Mine is an audio podcast. That's one of the things that I've been involved with. I've also written 2 books. The first one was called How to Keep Your Child from Going to Jail. That was based on a lot of my courtroom experiences over the years, and it's available on Amazon. And the second one was called Perspectives. No one can take what you have between your ears. That's based upon a series of devotional messages I've developed down through over the last few years. And it's about 55 or so devotional messages that one can read from A to Z, and a little bit of encouragement. But it's basically you're hearing the thoughts that I have developed over the years that the good Lord has activated within me. So check them out. Both of them are available on Amazon, and the Kindle version is available for the first book. And we're still working on that second aspect of Kindle for the second as well. I think we got both now. Both books are available both in hard copy as well as via Kindle. So please check them out and please support us. Again, you can reach them on Hubert Grimes on Amazon.com, and you'll see both books listed therein. Or you can see them also listed on our podcast archives all the way back to, I believe it was March of this past year.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you all so very, very much. God bless and Happy New Year to you. And stay safe, because we need you pontificating all of the brilliance that you all have locked up in you to share and pour out into our communities and our families. Love you and God bless. And thank
Love you. Happy
I love you, brother. Blessings to you.
Thank you all. Thank you
All right.
all. So
Good night.
there you have it. We're so grateful to all of our guests. Bernard, thank you and Henry, thank you always. We're going to get for just being a part of this show. And I think we did a good job of staying on topic tonight and comparing, seeing how far we've come since 2020. Sometimes you have to just go back and look and see from whence you come to appreciate your blessings. Dialogue with Dozell. We'll see you again in 2023. When is that? That's next Monday night. And we hope to have life coach Curtis Dean on with us to help us in setting priorities and preparing and planning for the upcoming year. We're looking for you here. We got great shows ahead. Go Get Your Creations, that's our sponsors. Those are they're the ones that bring us here every week. We're doing some exciting things. Hopefully we'll be able to start talking about some of the things they're doing. We love each of you. God bless. We'll see you next Monday night. Happy New Year to all.